Hi, I'm Stephen Smiley, the co-host of the Signal podcasts on ABC News, and today on The Filter, we're talking about the impact of smartphones on photography.
We're going to reinvent the phone, and we are calling it iPhone.
The first iPhone appeared on the market just over 10 years ago, and since then we've been immersed in an ever-intensifying deluge of images, some challenging, some beautiful, but to be honest, mostly just food pics and selfies. There's no doubt that the smartphone is responsible for a democratisation of photography, but has this come at a cost for both professional photographers and for society at large? Joining me to discuss these questions are the director of the upcoming Head On Photography Festival, Moche Rosenveig, artist Justine Varga, who uses both camera and non-camera techniques to explore the experience of time. Her work, Maternal Line, controversially won the prestigious Olive Cotton Award for photographic portraiture last year, and former photojournalist and fine art photographer David Redhill. David is now a marketing executive and iPhone enthusiast who recently won an international prize at the iPhone Photography Awards for this abstract image of the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin. Okay, so can you tell us about how you ended up as a smartphone photographer?
It's funny because I got an award for a smartphone photograph last year, a global award for an abstract. You know, people are asking me to defend the smartphone or something. It's sort of weird because I learnt to take photographs and print by my parents at the age of 10. I was in a dark room in the bedroom printing for early black and whites at that stage. I've worked as a photojournalist, as a fine art photographer, as a landscape photographer, a number of different mediums. And it just became a pragmatic issue that I was traveling so much with my job, I needed a camera with me. And I was always an apologist for the limitations of the smartphone until I realized, look, this is a valid medium, the lenses are getting better, let's see what we can create with this. And so I started pushing myself to experiment a lot more with the medium and started getting much better results. And as a result, yeah, I think it's an entirely valid, fulfilling medium. And it's also forced the issue of photographers who really take the medium seriously having to raise their game to cut through. Some of photographers complain about that, the fact that it's harder to cut through, but it forces, like with music, like with citizen journalism, it forces the people to work harder to actually create great art, and that's a good thing too.
Do you think that's been the case, Justine? Do you think that it's raised the bar for what professional photographers need to play with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really forces you to question your role as an image maker. I mean, for me as an artist, I'm always asking myself a question like, what sort of image do I want to, or photographic image do I want to contribute? I mean, it does make you have to sit back and think about that very seriously and deeply, and so I guess the way that I make my photography is a response to that in a sense.
And do you look at just the sheer volumes of photos, literally billions of photos uploaded around the world, and think that, that pushes you to experiment more with material, with form and with technique in a way that you might not have if that were not the case?
Yeah, it's hard to say if I would or I wouldn't, but this is the current condition, so yeah, I mean, I do think about it. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's kind of like there are billions of photographs out there that we could potentially tap into. However, we can only ever ingest a certain amount of imagery nonetheless. And, I'm very conscious about what I do engage with as well. And, I mean, for example, I actually don't do any social media, and because I just don't want to engage with it on that level.
What do you make of all of that, Moche? Do you think that we're becoming more discerning consumers of photography, given how exposed we are to it in the world now?
Look, I hope so. My big issue for a number of years, which we discovered through the festival, is the lack of visual literacy that we've got. Marshall McLuhan talks about the medium is the message and visual language versus written language and all the rest of it. But, 30 years later, we haven't moved much. And a lot of people are consuming imagery and they probably understand it on sort of superficial level, yeah. But they don't really get it, and it's very difficult. We've been talking to arts teachers at schools in Australia because we're running a competition for students, and many of them admitted openly that they've got no idea what photography is. They learn about painting and, you know, filmmaking, whatever it would be, but they don't learn photography. The visual language is not explained to them.
So I think that's a really good point, because once you put the ability to make pictures in the hands of many more people, that does naturally lead to a greater visual literacy, because the appreciation of what it takes to make a great photograph.
So you think it's a sort of thinner type of literacy?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily, people aren't necessarily thinking about what it is that they're actually doing, you know, and I think that is problematic.
Have you found, Moche, that with the fact that everybody or most people can take photos, there's increasing interest in going beyond the basic smartphone snap and learning a little more about photography?
I think that's probably one of the big things that happen with the phone. We do get people who start with a mobile phone and they do pictures of the coffee or whatever, which is, look, I won't put it down. It's communication. They want to say, I had a great coffee, and tell their friends or whoever it is out there. It's a way of communicating something. But they start with this one, and then they discover a whole lot of other things about photography, and then they realize that the phone can give them this much, and if they want to do something else, they need something, you know, another medium, another technology beyond that, and they go for a different camera or whatever it would be.
I guess one big difference, though, with that sort of, you know, taking a photo of your breakfast or of a sunset or something, is it's quick, it's easy. You take a couple of snaps, you know, choose the one that you like and you upload it, and it's gone. Whereas the kind of photography that you're doing is longer, is forward planned. You know, you're out in the field for a long time to get the right sort of elements. Do you think, or do you hope, as Moche is saying, that more people will get interested in that kind of thing now?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily because I think people should have to produce the kind of imagery that I do. I think that photography is a broad church. I mean, and a photograph or photography is more than one thing.
Yes.
You know, and so what I have a problem with is when people want to silence other people in what they want to say or produce, you know, and that I think that is, you know, something that is at play at the moment.
I think you can't avoid. People have very strong opinions, and they like to express them. And you know what, the environment we live in now, you know, you can express yourself, and we get some horrific comments occasionally.
Yeah. Well, I have experienced that.
I'm sure you have last year. Yes. But the thing is, that's what people want to do, and you know, that's their right to do.
Your point about the broad church is really well taken, because photography has to be appreciated, you know, not just at the highbrow or lowbrow. It started off as documentation, and it has been used in journalism, in communication. If it's a coffee, I am here. It's the first draft of history in image-wise, and it's a fine art medium, just like journalism. I mean, just like the act of writing on a spectrum of science to art.
Yeah, there's the text message and the Shakespeare.
Blank verse and poetry through to journalism, which is the first draft of history.
Yeah.
So you can't, any exclusivist view about what photography should be is by definition wrong.
Same argument was thrown at Leica at the time. You know, you can't use this camera, it's a Mickey Mouse camera because it has 35mm film, and we are using 10x8 inch film. So this must be crap camera, you can't use it, it's not photography. And same arguments happen with the mobile phone photography, and it's totally irrelevant. At the end of the day, it's what you produce with that instrument. Yeah, it has limitations, but every technique would have its own limitations. The question is what you end up with.
Yeah, and which is also often where creativity is bred, you know. Yes. I mean, for example, like when you're at art school, the people with the best paint and the best brushes don't necessarily make the best painting, because it's actually not what it's about. It's about how you use your given medium or technology, and also, you know, we shouldn't speak about these things if they're binary opposites. They're different.
They exist on a spectrum. They're not black or white.
Yeah, and also it's not even on generational lines in a sense. I mean, you know, I'm somewhat younger and yet I'm using, you know, an older technology. but reconfiguring that into the present. And then people, that are a little bit older are using, it's sort of the digital. People like to pigeonhole and make sort of definitions and boundaries, but actually it's a lot more fluid than that, I think.
If I can push something here,
Yes.
my own agenda, we've got a competition that we run every year for the last, whatever it is, 5 years now, the mobile phone. And we've got an amazing array of pictures there. The images are all the way from very personal sort of diaries to stuff that is extremely sophisticated and constructed within the phone or an app or whatever it is. And they're all valid, and each one of them is very different, and they're still amazingly beautiful and engaging and say something about the photographer and about our society and our own perception when we look at it, how we see the world. And all of them are on the phone. It's quite amazing.
Thanks everybody for your time. Great to have your thoughts.
Thank you.